Hi everyone, in the second vlog for SAC 7101, I'm going to look at the relationship between skill and capacity within the context of speed and agility drills. Specifically, the focus of this video is going to be on the acceleration start for the speed component and 180-degree change of direction for the agility component. First, we're going to start with Leonie, who's limited by capacity in the acceleration start. As we can see from this video, during the first step of acceleration, Leonie shows an optimal forward lean angle of about 45 degrees, which helps optimize horizontal force production. However, her knee drive is quite low and her shin is not in a parallel alignment with the extended leg and drops in a more vertical orientation, resulting in a more anterior foot placement relative to her center of mass and therefore greater braking forces than desired. The increased vertical forces lead to a reduction in the time available to produce horizontal propulsive forces, leading to suboptimal acceleration. Also to be noted is the upper back flexion, which can be caused by the need to keep a balanced center of gravity due to the foot placement or a posterior chain deficit. In order to identify if the issue is one of skill or capacity, we firstly perform the A-skip to see if similar technical issues appear. From the start, we can see that Leonie struggles to extend her legs to push into the ground and maintain an upright posture from head to foot, despite showing proper rhythm and a high knee drive. After the first repetition, I've cued Leonie to try and make herself long from head to foot and maintain that strong posture while pushing against the ground. However, the improvement during the following repetitions was only minor as she was still struggling with extension, demonstrating that a capacity issue rather than skill is preventing Leonie from properly executing these movements. This could be caused by mobility issues, which in turn can cause compensations to occur during running as well as posture, thus affecting her acceleration performance. These compensations should be addressed in order to not only improve technique and subsequent performance, but also to reduce the risk of injury associated with movement compensations. We first tested Leonie's upper back mobility for the bench thoracic extension test, and it can be seen from the video that T-spine mobility is a limiting factor for Leonie as she is unable to reach full thoracic extension and shoulder flexion within the test. Next, we've performed mobility testing at the hips by using an active internal and external rotation test, which shows that on both sides of the hip, Leonie possesses limited mobility. These mobility issues could result in reduced ranges of motion and compensatory movement, which can lead to suboptimal acceleration mechanics. To address these issues, we first performed foam rolling to reduce intrinsic stiffness of the hips as well as her upper back in order to help enhance range of motion in combination with subsequent mobility exercises. For the upper back, Leonie performed wall slides to work on the thoracic extension, and for the hips, she's performed supported and unsupported hip rotations in order to target both internal and external rotation in both her hips. Lastly, we've gone back to the acceleration start to see if any acute improvements in running technique are visible. We can see during the first steps of acceleration that her hip flexion range of motion has improved and also exhibits a slightly more extended upper back, demonstrating mobility as her limiting factor and area of improvement. Further working on increases in range of motion using the exercises presented as well as derivatives will allow Leonie the necessary mobility to improve her running technique and ultimately her acceleration performance. Next, we have Fine, who is limited by skill in the acceleration start. Fine starts with a slightly less aggressive angle during the first step compared to Leonie, and she doesn't exhibit full extension of the back leg, including during subsequent steps, with her torso being slightly bent over, resulting in suboptimal horizontal force production during the propulsive phase. Additionally, her knee drive is quite low, with the foot of the swing leg passing just below the height of the knee, resulting in more frequent small steps and more vertically oriented forces, leading to inefficient ground reaction forces. Like Leonie, we've performed the A-skip to determine the limiting factor for Fine's acceleration pattern. We can see that in comparison, Fine is capable of fully extending her back leg during the skips while simultaneously achieving full hip flexion with the front leg and maintaining proper posture during the movement drill. Rhythm during A-skips is also not an issue for Fine, suggesting that skill rather than a capacity issue is the limiting factor in her acceleration mechanics. We've started with wall drills to build up the awareness of limb positioning, ground contact, and posture for acceleration. Again, as it can be seen with the posture holds drill, Fina possesses the range of motion necessary to achieve and maintain this position, confirming that skill and coordination are the areas she needs to improve upon. We've firstly gone through several wall drills to work on leg action and allowing Fina to understand the feel of optimally directing forces to the ground, all the while cueing Fina to maintain a strong line from head to toe and driving the knee forward towards the wall to ensure back leg extension. Next, we've taken the posture and positioning from the drills and worked on efficient force application to the ground. Firstly, with pop float skips, focusing on rhythm and timing aspect of the movement, followed up by bounding to work on driving force into the ground quickly and reinforcing key technical components of running. Lastly, we've gone to the acceleration start to check for technique changes. We can now see her technique has improved, showing full back leg extension during the propulsive phase, as well as improved hip flexion and knee drive from the swing leg. resulting in longer strides and allowing Fine to apply greater force into the ground, thus improving her acceleration performance. Moving on to the 180-degree change of direction, we will start with Vike, who is mainly limited by skill. When looking at the change of direction mechanics, two issues can be noticed on both right and left side changes of direction. Firstly, the placement of the outside foot on the line pointing outward, causing a misalignment of the hip, knee, and ankle. Ideally, we want the foot rotated more towards the intended direction of travel in order to optimally load the outside leg through the inside edge of the foot, thereby optimizing the efficiency of the turn due to greater application of force to the ground. Secondly, Vike brings the inside leg quite close to the outside leg when changing direction, resulting in a very narrow base, causing her to shift her center of mass up and consequently leading to less than optimal ground forces and angle of force application. This also results in the need of additional steps in order to orient her body to the direction of travel as well as increasing acceleration speed. To address these issues, we've performed wall drills first in order to emphasize the direction of the foot of the outside leg as well as positioning of the inside leg, which should stay within inside the shoulder, followed up by a lateral load and lift to get out of and reattain the desired position. To further build up on this awareness of limb positioning, we've transitioned to field and performed isolated drills for the 180 change of direction. First, emphasizing the lateral shuffle and focusing on placement of the foot of the outside leg and using the cones as a reference for the leg positioning and base of support during cutting. For these drills, I've instructed Vike to focus on keeping a wide base while simultaneously keeping her weight inside the cut. In the next progression, Vike performs solely the 180-degree turn by starting with the final approach step and changing direction as well as body orientation, all the while focusing on the same points and cues as in the previous drill. Finally, after performing these drills, we've gone back to the 180 change of direction itself to see if there are positive improvements to be seen in her movement technique. Compared to her first performance, Vike now uses a wider stance, which now allows her to better drop her center of mass and position her inside leg in a more optimal position to produce force. Subsequently, her body orientation also slightly improved, with her trunk rotating a bit more towards the direction of travel. Foot placement during the cutting maneuver, however, still shows room for improvement, as greater internal foot progression angle is needed, showing that the movement is not yet ingrained in Vike's technique. With additional targeted training, however, Vike will in time improve this technical error and ultimately result in a more efficient cutting technique. Lastly, we're going to look at Fine, who is limited by capacity. When looking at her movement on both sides, it can be seen that Fine approaches the change of direction with additional small stutter steps before stopping and turning in the opposite direction, with these steps occurring on both the right and left side changes of direction. In addition, her trunk faces more in the direction of approach instead of laterally, and due to the extra smaller steps on approach ends up in a narrow base width as well, which causes her to readjust her limb positioning in order to get out of the cut, costing Fine additional time. Her approach and movement strategy in the 180 change of direction could be the result of her not being able to tolerate high braking forces and properly decelerate from faster running velocities. Therefore, she is forced to take additional smaller steps in order to dissipate braking forces and better cope with the demands of the task. To test this, we've assessed her landing mechanics and eccentric strength capacity using the drop landing. When looking at her double leg landing, it can be seen that Fine struggles to properly decelerate, resulting in a deeper than desired landing. The landings on the single leg are just as deep, and Fine has difficulty in maintaining balance as well, especially on her left leg where she fails to stabilize and falls off balance on multiple attempts. These landings can be the result of suboptimal eccentric strength and an inability to stabilize the movement. Although for Fine both skill and capacity need to be improved in this movement pattern, her lack of capacity, or in this instance the ability to tolerate braking forces, should be prioritized, as greater eccentric strength may help Fine to improve deceleration ability due to improved capacity to withstand ground reaction forces, thus enhancing her performance in the drill. This will allow her to exhibit a more optimal approach technique and consequently improve her skill in change of direction ability. The drills that we performed involve unilateral lower body exercises focusing on the eccentric portion of the lift, such as single leg touchdowns to enhance motor unit recruitment, and a slow and controlled eccentric portion, forcing Fine to stabilize the lower limbs throughout the whole movement. Plyometric exercises are also included, as these can help enhance eccentric strength and rapid force development through the stretch shortening cycle, qualities which are necessary during change of direction tasks. We've performed unilateral hops laterally in order to focus on lateral power development, which is more similar to the 180-degree turn. Long-term training recommendations are to continue performing unilateral lower body strength exercises and single leg plyometrics with a high focus on the frontal plane, while using these exercises in conjunction with wall drills specific for change of direction in order to work on the technical aspect of the 180-degree turn, allowing Fine to ultimately express the newly gained strength efficiently in the movement pattern.